Shalom, friends. Welcome to another shiur in Talmud. I'm Eliyahu Shir from Chesed Ve'emet. You can find me on www.lovingkindness.co. We're learning Gemara Berachot, the Gemara dealing with blessings, filled with wonderful halachot, wonderful set of laws that we're going to come across, all sorts of laws dealing with blessings on food, on various sightings. It's a very exciting Gemara. And in addition to that, we learn so many different Agadic passages, so many stories and mystical stories that are brought in this Gemara. It is said that the Gemara Berachot is in fact the longest of all the Masechtas, of all the Gemaras in the whole of Shas. Berachot is the longest. What we mean is, in terms of the words, that it is the longest to get through, and I think that is because of all the abundance of stories that we see, whereas other Gemarot are of course much longer in terms of the amount of pages. The Talmud of the Gemara of Berachot is longer in terms of the amount of words. This is because of all the stories that we found over here. Now we're using the Koren Talmud Bavli, written by Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz. And as you can see, it's a very beautiful Gemara, which you can follow together with me as we read together. We're going to be reading the original text, and thereafter you can see in the middle of the page the English, and on the sides and the bottom you can see notes, biographies, halachot, pictures, and a variety of other important things that help us navigate our way throughout the Gemara as we learn. So we're on Daf Hey Amud Aleph, which is 5a. And our last part of the Gemara that we ended with was a fascinating insight into a particular verse where Rabbi Levi Bar Chama said that Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said that a person should always agitate. He should be in a fighting mode with the Yetzer Tov against the Yetzer Hara. Life is a battle, and there's this constant friction between our desires to do certain things which are not necessarily appropriate or should be done against the things that we should do. And so we're constantly in this conflict. And how do we get over the conflict? Well, we get over the conflict by either thinking about this particular verse of constantly agitating the Yetzer Tov against the Yetzer Hara until we can win this war. And if we win, well and good. If not, we should occupy ourselves in Torah, because the Torah is this powerful force that can help us to overcome the desires that we have for certain things. And we think about it, we think about the meaning of life. Hopefully the Torah itself, as it teaches us, will get us out of the rut of being overcome by the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. And then we learned, of course, that if a person is not successful through the study of Torah, then he should read the Kriat Shema, because in the Kriat Shema we read also many ideas that express the importance of the focus on studying Torah, the fulfillment of the mitzvot, Hashem rewarding and Hashem punishing, and so on and so forth. And hopefully this will get us to defeat the Yetzer Hara. Nevertheless, if we're unsuccessful and we're still unable to overcome the Yetzer Hara, what is the next step to take? The next step to take is to remember the day of death. When we remember the day of death, hopefully we come to realize that life is more than what we thought it was in terms of general fun and games, etc. But rather, there is a purpose to the world. There's a purpose that the soul has descended into a physical body, and that ultimately is to acknowledge God. The Jewish people do this acknowledgement through the study of Torah, the fulfillment of the mitzvot. It's Shabbos, it's Kashrut, it's the laws of family purity, it's the study of Torah so much. There's Tanakh, and there's the Talmud, and there's the Shulchan Aruch and the Halacha, and there's the Midrash, and there's the Kabbalah. And through doing all of these things, we come to fulfill our purpose in creation. We have to connect with God. That's one level. We have to learn how to grow ourselves, and we also have to learn to connect with other people in trying to help them and doing whatever it is that we're able to do to assist them in their particular path in life, and to get them to also go along a path that is good, responsible, and reaches a purposeful goal in life. So anyway, we read this particular section, and that's where we ended off last week. We did not, however, read here the personalities of who was Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. And I think we're going to definitely read it because it's so important. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, also known as Reish Lakish, from the abbreviation of his name, Reish Lakish, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Now, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, typically referred to as Reish Lakish, was among the greatest Amoraim in Eretz Israel. This is the rabbi who's told us the secret to combating the Yetzer Hara and winning this battle. And he was amongst the greatest of Amoraim in Eretz Israel. He was the friend and brother-in-law of Rabbi Yochanan. Everybody knows the great Rabbi Yochanan, who we'll learn so much about at a later stage as well. I think we've mentioned him a few times already in the Gemara, where Rabbi Yochanan, as we know, was a very good-looking man, and many stories are told about him, and we know that he was said responsible for the writing of the Talmud Yerushalmi. So Reish Lakish was the learning partner and the friend and the brother-in-law of Rabbi Yochanan, and of course it's a fascinating story as to how it came about that he became the brother-in-law of Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish's life story is amazing. So he's telling us over here, he studied Torah from a young age, but perhaps due to dire financial straits, he sold himself to a Roman circus as a gladiator. There are many stories in the Talmud that attest to his great strength. Sometime later, in the wake of a meeting with Rabbi Yochanan, he resumed his Torah study, first as a student of Rabbi Yochanan, then as a friend and colleague, and he married Rabbi Yochanan's sister. It's interesting that he was actually involved in theft and a lifestyle which was quite against Torah values, but he was a very strong man, and Rabbi Yochanan saw his great strength, and he was able to click into the great strength of Reish Lakish and tell him that his strength was there in order to serve Hashem. One should use one's strengths, one should use the powers that God has given one, not for negative things. And Reish Lakish was a very strong man, and with his strength at the time, he was using it for matters that were against Torah, involved in corrupt matters, until Rabbi Yochanan brought him back to the Torah and told him, ultimately, you, Reish Lakish, need to use your strength to study Torah and to fulfill the mitzvot and to use whatever power you have to help other people. That is what you've got your strength for, not to show off and not to use it for negative things. Many halachic disagreements between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan concerning central issues of halacha are recorded in the Talmud. His objective was not to disagree with Rabbi Yochanan, but rather to help him hone his opinion through debate. Rabbi Yochanan related to him with great respect, often saying, "My peer disagrees with me." He was well known for his strict piety, to the extent that one with whom Reish Lakish was seen conversing in public was said to be able to borrow money without guarantors, as Reish Lakish only associated with people beyond reproach. When he died, he was survived by his wife and son, who was a child prodigy. Nothing more is known about him. Okay, so now we continue over here. We've read this particular teaching that was brought down that Reish Lakish had said about the battle between the Yetzer Tov against the Yetzer Hara. And now we come to another teaching again. As we see over here, that's the nature of the Gemara very often, that it will bring down the teaching of a certain rabbi, and it's told in the name of Rabbi so-and-so. And then immediately afterwards, the next part of the Gemara again, even if the 2 points are totally unrelated, because they are both related in the name of one particular teacher or two teachers, as in this case. So since it's related, it brings down this Gemara as well, even though at this point in time, we can clearly see that the two Gemarot, the two sugyas, the two parts of this Gemara over here are really not related at all, but they are said in the name and they're said by the same person. V'omar Rabbi Levi bar Chama, Omar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. So Rabbi Levi, the son of Chama, said that Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, this rabbi that we've just been mentioning over here, the brother-in-law of Rabbi Yochanan, he said the following: My diksiv, what is it that is written? What does this verse mean? Ve'etna lecha es luchos ha'even v'haTorah v'hamitzvah asher kasavti lahoresam. What does this verse mean over here? It says, and I have given to you the tablets of stone and the Torah and the mitzvah, which means the whatever the Torah is and whatever the mitzvah is, the commandments, asher kasavti lahorosam, that I wrote down in order to instruct them. Says Rabbi Levi bar Chama that Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said the following: that luchos, when the word used over here, luchos, the tablets, elu Aseret HaDibrot. These are the 10 commandments. Torah, what is the Torah? Because every single word in the Torah counts. So the fact that we read over here 3 different expressions comes to tell us that there are 3 different aspects of teaching here. There's the luchos ha'even, there's the Torah, and there's the mitzvah. Each of these each one is a different category to the other. Luchos, this refers to the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 commandments. Torah, ze mikra. The Torah refers to the written law, like the Chumash, for example. V'ha mitzvah. And what does it mean that God said, and I've given you basically the mitzvah? What does that mean? Zo Mishnah. This refers to the Mishnah, which is the oral Torah. Asher katavti, that I have written. What does it mean that I've written? Elu neviim uksuvim. This refers to the prophets and the writings, which encompass therefore the whole of the Tanakh, the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim, which refers to the prophets, Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, and the writings like the book of Psalms and various other books, the Megillat Esther, for example, and so on and so forth. Lehoiroisam, what does it mean to instruct them? Ze Talmud, this refers to the Talmud itself. Oh, so mitzvah, that refers to the Mishnah. But the Lehoiroisam, that refers to the Talmud, which is much more intensive than the Mishnah itself. The Mishnah tells us the basic principle. The Talmud elaborates in much greater detail. Melamed comes to teach us what this verse is telling us, is Shekulam nitnu leMoshe miSinai, that all of them were given to Moshe, or given, in other words, from Moshe, because Moshe is going to give it to the Jewish people at Sinai. All of the Torah that we have today was ultimately given to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moses, our teacher, received the entire Torah when he was on Har Sinai. Many people today, as we know, come along and they say, well, you know, maybe I can believe in what's written down in the Bible, they say, but I'm not really interested so much in all these other books. Perhaps the rabbis wrote it, some people, they were thinking about some ideas and they wrote these ideas down. And therefore, they don't want to follow all of these mitzvot. And they claim perhaps that since a man wrote it, therefore it's irrelevant, somebody made the story up. But the reality is, in the small teaching over here, in that Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish tells us, is that the very verse itself in the Chumash is teaching us that God has given us different sections as we related over. The first section referred to the 10 Commandments, and then the second section referred to the Chumash in particular. The mitzvah referred to the Mishnah that I wrote down. This is first the Nevi'im and Ketuvim, and to teach them, that's the Talmud. We see that everything was given to Moshe, and therefore, no matter what it is that we're learning in Torah, this is from Moshe Rabbeinu. No human being wrote it down in terms of his own logic, but rather these are the teachings that they received from Moshe on Mount Sinai that have been passed down from generation to generation, with each of the students learning it to a degree that they became completely fluent in, ultimately becoming the teachers for the next generation, and the students of those teachers becoming completely fluent in all the areas of Torah. And that is what brought them to the levels of being able to instruct and to teach. And so therefore the Torah that we have today is the fullness of what Moshe received on Har Sinai. We continue. Rabbi Yitzchak said the following, Kol HaKerei Kriat Shema Al HaMitah. So now we go back to the story that we began before, which is reading the Kriat Shema. And in particular, we're speaking about reading the Kriat Shema on one's bed, meaning before one goes to sleep at night, not literally on the bed, but before one goes to sleep at night, one must recite the Kriat Shema. The words of Torah should be on one's lips, and one should fall into a deep sleep with the holy words of the Torah on one's lips. So a person now who recites the Kriat Shema on his bed, meaning before he goes to sleep, this is like a person who holds a double-edged sword in his hand. What does it mean, a double-edged sword? Take a sword, it has one side that's usually sharp and the other side which is blunt. Now, if we take a sword that is sharp on both sides, well, that is a very powerful sword that can kill in any direction. Wherever you wave the sword, to the left, to the right, and if a person's in the way, they're going to be in serious trouble. If it's a sword and it only has one edge on it that's sharp, well, of course, the warrior has to line up the sword in exactly the direction of where he's cutting. But if he has a double-edged sword, he can wave it about in any direction, and one of the sides is bound to strike the enemy. So a person who goes to sleep at night and he says the Kriat Shema on his bed, meaning before he goes to sleep, it is as if he holds a double-edged sword in his hand. Shneimar. How do we know that? Because the verse says, Romamos el bigroinam v'cherev pifios b'yadam. Well, what does this mean over here? It means high praises of God in their mouths and a sword with a double edge on it in their hands. So what does this mean? Romamos kael bigronam, which means high praises of God in their throats. My mashma, how is this implied that this relates to the Kriat Shema on one's bed and it's going to have such an effect? Omar Marzutra said, V'isei Rav Ashi, some say it was Rav Ashi that said the following statements. Meireisha di'inyana. The answer is from the first part of what we read over there. How does that work? Diksiv, because it's written over there in the preceding verse, Ya alzu chasidim bechavod, Yerananu al mishkafosam, which means the chasidim will rejoice in honor, meaning to say that they're going to, as he translates it, the pious exult in glory. They're going to sing out in glory. Yerananu al mishkafosam. And what does that mean? Let them joyously sing upon their beds. What are they going to sing? Meaning the Kriat Shema. Ukasiv basrei. What is it that they're going to be doing? The Kriat Shema. Romamos el bigronam. They're going to have high praises of God in their throats and a double-edged sword in their hands, which means to say that this refers to the Kriat Shema that is recited before going to sleep at night. And Rabbi Yitzchak says the following, another teaching, Kriat Shema Al HaMitah, anybody who reads the Kriat Shema on his bed, mazikin bedelin heimenu, the demons depart from him. So when a person is reciting the Kriat Shema, any evil forces that could attack a person when he's sleeping at night, we know stories. When people go to sleep at night, sometimes, unfortunately, they have terrible nightmares. Well, according to the Torah, these nightmares are coming from these particular demonic forces, let's call them evil forces that interrupt a person's sleep in order to taunt a person. They exist in the world that they exist in, but at nighttime, and especially when we're sleeping at nighttime, they come out and they begin to infiltrate into our minds and cause us to see images and to think certain things as we're sleeping, interrupting our sleep and causing us to have nightmares. But if a person recites the Kriat Shema and he says it with kavanah and he keeps his thoughts pure and he studies some Torah before he goes to sleep and all these different things, all these things help a person to be able to sleep more peacefully at night. Not a guarantee, of course, and as we're going to read much later on in chapter 9 of Gemara Berachot, this Gemara, where it deals with the interpretation of dreams, we see that many times a person can have certain dreams that are quite odd, that seem like nightmares, and yet the meaning of the dream is quite pleasant. So there are different interpretations and different ways to understand it. Nevertheless, a person who recites the Kriat Shema on his bed, then the nature of these demons is that they fly away from him, Shneimar, because it says there in a pasuk, Uvenei Reshef Yakbihu Uf, which means to say the following, but man is born into trouble, and the sparks, Reshef, fly off upwards. What does that mean? How do you understand this? That this refers to the Kriat Shema and the demons are leaving a person? V'ein off ela Torah, because the word off, which refers to something here, refers to the Torah itself. Shneimar, because it says Hata'if einecho bo ve'einenu. If you close your eyes to it, and it is no longer, which refers to the fact that if a person closes his eyes to the Torah, which means he stops studying Torah, then the Torah disappears from him. As the Torah says, if you'll leave me for 1 day, I will leave you for 2 days. A person who is studying Torah, and then he decides, you know what, today I'm just not in the mood. I'm not going to study any Torah. Well, if he does that, then the Torah packs up its bags and said, if you leave me for 1 day, I will leave you for 2 days. In other words, if you close your eyes to the Torah, says the pasuk, then all of a sudden the Torah disappears. Well, why, they ask, does the Torah leave a person for 2 days if it is that we only leave the Torah for 1 day? Shouldn't it be fair that the Torah should leave us also only for 1 day? It's not fair. So that's the answer to the puzzle is that the Torah says like this: you should know something. If you leave me for one day, I will pack up my bags and I will leave you also for one day. As a result of that, we will be separated by a distance of 2 days. So leave me for one day and I'll leave you for 2. That's the message. And therefore, if a person closes his eyes to the Torah, it disappears from him. And this is what this pasuk means over here. It's referring to the Torah. If you close your eyes to the Torah, it's going to disappear. We see therefore that the word off refers to the Torah. So this pasuk over here that says, and the sparks fly upwards, relates to the Torah itself. When a person studies Torah, something is flying about. What's flying about? Ve'ein reshef ele mazikin. And the word reshef, where it says here, u'bnei reshef, the bnei, the sons of reshef, yagbiu off, what does reshef refer to? Ein reshef ele mazikin. Reshef refers to the demons, which means that the demons, u'bnei reshef, the demons, yagbiu off. The Torah causes the demons to fly away from him. Shenema, because it says in the pasuk, Mezeira av ulechume reshef v'ketiv meriri. So this is a pasuk in the Torah, and it says over there that the wasting of hunger and the devouring of sparks, reshef, and bitter destruction. So what do we see from here? As we see in the note over here in the translation, and the teeth of beasts I will send upon them with the venom of crawling things of the dust. Here we see reshef listed along with ketiv meriri, both of which are understood by the sages to be names of demons. So therefore, when a person studies Torah, when he says the Kriat Shema on his bed, then all of the demons fly away from him and depart from him. Once again, there are many halachot involved in reciting the Kriat Shema Al HaMitah on one's bed. One should certainly learn it. But the short of it is that a person should recite the Kriat Shema before he goes to sleep. And he recites the Bracha of Hamapil, as is brought down in all the Sidurim, whatever Siddur a person has. If he opens up for the Kriat Shema Al HaMitah, he will find all of these prayers over there. If he can't recite it all in Hebrew, he could recite it in English, but at least the Kriat Shema he should try and recite, of course, in Hebrew, because it contains a special power to it with 248 words. As we have to recite it in a certain way, it's 245 words, and then some people say Kel Melech Ne'eman before they begin. Some people say the last 3 words at the end where it says Ani Hashem Elokeichem Emet, they say Ani Hashem Elokeichem, Ani Hashem Elokeichem Emet, they repeat it twice. That makes up 248 words. There are 248 limbs in the body, and so therefore this protects one, and therefore one should recite the words in the Hebrew itself. And of course the bracha, which we say to go to sleep, hamapil, should also preferably be recited in Hebrew. As much as possible, one should strive to recite the entire Kriat Shema, all of the parts in Hebrew. If one is not sure what one is saying, spend some time reading the English translation next to it, or glance at the English while reading the Hebrew. Read the Hebrew and see what the English says, and understand it and appreciate it and see the beauty of what it is. Immediately, when a person recites Hamapil, he should then immediately go to sleep. He should then not decide that he's going to talk to people, and then he's going to answer the telephone, and he's going to check up on certain things and check his email just before he goes to sleep, and then check up his diary, what's going on the next day. So everything should be prepared, and one should get oneself into the mood so that immediately after he has finished reciting his Kriat Shema and his Bracha, there should be no interruption whatsoever until he goes to sleep. So ideally, he prepares himself in the most in whatever way he can, the best possible way, so that at the moment he's finished reciting his bracha, immediately he can go to sleep. With that, he takes the Kriat Shema, which is this cherev pifios, which is a double-edged sword, and he's able to combat against these demons. The demons see the Kriat Shema that he is reciting, and they flee away from him. And of course, one should have a kosher mezuzah on one's bedroom door, as on all doors of the house, with the exception of rooms like a toilet and the bathroom and so on and so forth. So we see over here that this is what this pasuk comes to teach us. Omar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says the following teaching. Remember, we've been learning about the teachings of Reish Lakish, and here is another teaching. He says, Kol ha'osek b'Torah, anybody who studies Torah, Yisurim b'deilin hemenu, afflictions leave him, meaning they stay away from him. If a person is occupied in the study of Torah, then he will not be afflicted with any afflictions. Oh, that's very interesting, of course, because we know, practically speaking, there are many Torah scholars who involve themselves in Torah study day and night, and yet we know that they suffer from sicknesses, they often are weak, and various other things occur to them. So this teaching of Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish needs a lot of explanation. Because the pasuk says, "U'bnei reshef yagbiu of." Look at this. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish makes use of the exact same pasuk that we've been learning about before, which related to saying the Kriat Shema on the bed and causing the demons to depart from one. He's relating it to a new idea. The idea is that when you study Torah, then all afflictions stay away from a person. How do we know that? From the same words, which means, and the sparks fly upward. What does it mean that the sparks are flying upward? The ain of el Torah. According to Reish Lakish, the word of didn't refer, as we said before. We said over here that the of refers to Torah, but not Kriat Shema. We weren't referring to the Kriat Shema per se. Over here, we're referring to it specifically with regards to Torah study in general. As it says, as we said before, if you close your eyes to it, it disappears. But now a new teaching. Reish Lakish says that the word reshef refers to afflictions, not that reshef refers to the demons, as we said above. But reshef refers to afflictions. How do we know that? Because it says, what does it mean? Wasting of hunger and devouring of sparks. That's how the translation comes about. Wasting of hunger and the devouring of sparks. Equating devouring sparks with wasting hunger, as both are types of suffering. From here we derive that through Torah, fly. In other words, from the flying, this of idea, one is able to distance himself upward from suffering and sparks. These sparks that we're talking about over here. Let us just look at the note over here. The word fly, of, means nothing other than Torah. The proof does not seem absolute, because the Gemara is seeking proof regarding Shema in particular, and not regarding Torah study in general. This was explained through the dual implication of the word of, as well as an additional secondary meaning of the verse, will you set if your eyes upon it? It is gone. It is referring to portions of the Torah that one reads a short time before he goes to sleep, when he is about to shut his eyelids, afapayim. Regarding that portion, it says, will you set your eyes upon it? Others explain it based on an additional allusion from the word of, which means double in Aramaic. In other words, the portion of the Torah that is recited twice daily in the morning and evening. So according to our first interpretation, when we spoke about the of, we were relating it to the Kriat Shema, because of refers to double, referring to Kriat Shema, which is recited twice. On the other hand, according to Reish Lakish, the words of also refers to Torah in general. And as we said over here, that the reshef refers to the reshef refers to Yisurim, to afflictions, and not necessarily to the demons that departed are going to sleep. But in general, the Yisurim leave a person. When a person is involved in Torah study, then he keeps the afflictions away from him. All right, obviously, we know this is not a simple matter. Let us see more about what the Gemara discusses about this issue of Yisurim. Omar lei Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said the following to him, meaning to his brother-in-law, presumably Reish Lakish, or alternatively to Reish Lakish. He said the following: Ha, behold, afilu tinokas shel beis rabban yoidin oiso. Even children who are studying Torah in the schools, little children, and they're studying, they know that. They know this principle that when it is that a person is involved in Torah study, that the afflictions stay away from a person. Even they know that. What do I need Reish Lakish's teaching for? Because the pasuk says, "Vayomer im shamu tishma lekol Hashem Elokecha," and he said, "If you shall listen to the voice of Hashem your God, v'hayasha be'einav ta'aseh, and do the straight thing in His eyes, v'hazanta lemitzvosav, and you shall listen to His mitzvahs, v'shamarta kol chukav, and you shall guard all of His laws." Says the pasuk over there. This is referring to in the book of Shmois. What does it say? Kol ha'machala asher samti b'mitzrayim, every single disease that I've placed in Egypt, lo asim alecha, I will not place upon you. Ki ani Hashem Rof'echa, because I am Hashem, your God. Very interesting pasuk. So according to this pasuk, it's quite simple. If a person does what is correct, he listens to what God says, and he does the correct thing that he should do. I like to point out over here, many people like to often say that they're good people, and there's nothing wrong with that. For sure, they could be good people. We're not saying that they're not good people. But the Torah makes a definition of what the Torah calls good. Good is listening to what Hashem tells us is called good. When Hashem says to us, we need to keep Shabbos, that is part about being a good person. And if he says keeping the laws of Kashrut is part of being a good person, then that is also part of being a good person. Or following the laws of family purity, or following the laws of charity as they should be followed. No matter what it is, the Torah makes a definition of what's called good. When the Torah says, don't speak Lashon Hara, don't speak Rechilot, don't speak Onat Devarim, all of these things, defamation of character, and hurting a person with one's words, and all these various things. When the Torah says that don't do all these things, it comes from a Torah standpoint. It comes from the mind, so to speak, of God. So when we say we're good people, we only told that message to so-and-so because it was the truth, and actually we're very good people. This is not what goodness is. Goodness is what? According to this verse. If you listen to the voice of Hashem, your God, and you do uprightness things, you do things that are correct, and you listen to the mitzvahs, and you guard all of his laws. All of his laws. Interesting, the word chosen over here is called chukav, all of his laws. In the Torah, there are in fact 3 different types of laws. There is a law that is called a chok, there is a law that is called a mishpat, and there is a law that is called edus. What are edus? Edot refer to testimonies. For example, I observe a particular law because the law testifies to something that happens. For example, why do I wear tefillin? Not only because God commanded it, because God took us out of Egypt. So I wear tefillin. Many mitzvot are done in that way. It says, so eat on Pesach, eat matzah. Why should you eat matzah? Because God took you out of Egypt, so you've got to eat matzah. This refers to eidos, refers to the testimonies. We do the mitzvah because it testifies to something. We have this other mitzvah, which is called the mishpat, which refers to a judgment. This week's parsha, in fact, that we're reading is called Mishpatim. Mishpatim refer to mitzvot, which are logical in nature. And so that even a person who didn't study any Torah would come to the conclusion himself, if you give him a bit of time and he thinks about it as a sensible person should, he would see this particular commandment is something that ordinary people would observe, even if God didn't tell him to observe it. For example, don't steal, don't murder. All of these things refer to mitzvot that even a person who didn't study Torah would come to think of on his own, even if the Torah wasn't there. That's called the mishpat. But then there is another law, and that goes above all of these, and that's called a chok. And this is exactly what the word is that's chosen over here, called chukav, all of his chukim. A chok is a law which has no logical basis to it. For example, you really, no matter what you do, you can't come to understand the law. You can think about it, you can make up stories, you can do what you want, but you'll never understand it. For example, the mitzvah of Shatnez, that you may not mix wool and linen together in a garment, in the same garment, the two fibers may not be mixed together. Well, who would think of such a thing logically? Did we ever see in the secular courts that the judges and the lawyers are dealing with people that they found that they had the two fibers in their particular jackets? They caught somebody out in the marketplace. They saw, hey, this fellow is wearing a garment that has 2 fibers, which one is linen, others wool. Let us put him into prison for doing this. What a terrible thing he's done. Well, of course, in the secular world, in normal way of thinking, we can't imagine that the mitzvah of Shatnez would apply. It's a chok. There's no logical basis to it. Another chok would be, for example, don't eat, for a Jewish person may not eat chazir, may not eat pork. And we can think of all logical reasons why we shouldn't eat pork, but none of that is relevant, because in the world in general, people eat pork. They seem to be quite healthy. They live long lives. So there's no real logical reason as to why we can't eat pork. But the Torah says, God says, don't eat pork. And since that's a mitzvah, that becomes a mitzvah. End of story. That's called a chok. It's an illogical commandment. Another illogical commandment would be, don't eat meat and milk together. A Jew may not eat meat and milk together. Again, what logic is there to that? There are many people in the world who eat meat and milk together. They live happily ever after, and they are wealthy people. They live long lives, and things go their way. So obviously, there's no logic to the idea of mixing meat and milk. Why then do we observe this particular mitzvah? Answer: because God commanded it. That is why we observe the mitzvah. So this particular verse over here says that we have to listen to his mitzvahs, v'shamarta kol chukav, and you have to listen to all of his chukim, all the illogical mitzvahs, never mind all of the mishpatim, the logical mitzvahs, or the edot, the testimonies, but even the illogical mitzvahs must be observed fully. Things that don't make sense to us. We can logically turn them around and we can say that can't be because we know better. If so, and the pasuk says, because if you do that, every single disease that I've placed in Egypt, I will not place upon you, because I am Hashem your God. It's a very interesting idea that we say, if I'm not going to put it on you, why do we need to say that God is the doctor? I'm Hashem, your healer. I'm Hashem, your doctor. Well, I don't need a doctor. If you're not going to give me the disease in any case, I don't need a doctor. Answer: because the reason is that the body can always find itself in a state where there's a possibility that disease can enter. But God says, even if it will be that for a moment, for whatever reason, the germs enter into the body, creating a problem that a person might get sick, God makes a promise that immediately he will heal the person. Why? Because he is the healer. So even if it would be a situation that the germs enter the body, God will come and heal the person won't be sick any longer. Why? Because he observed all the mitzvot of the Torah as God had commanded him. Ella, but rather, what does all of this mean? So according to this, even young children who are studying Torah in kindergarten, even these kids, they know this verse. And it says over there, if you observe all the mitzvahs, you won't get sick. Why did therefore I need another verse that said over here that if we study Torah, so then as we said over here, wasting of hunger and the devouring of the sparks, equating devouring sparks with wasting hunger as both are types of suffering. And so from this we learned, if a person studies Torah, said Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Yeserim bedalim hemenu, then afflictions will stay away from him. We learned it out already in another pasuk. We didn't need Reish Lakish to teach us. Ella, but rather, here is the explanation. Kol she'efshar lo la'asok b'Torah. Anybody who has it in his power, it's possible for him. He has the time available. He has the money to do it, meaning to say that there's no problem. Let's imagine a person who's retired, for example, and the money is there in the bank, and the day is available to them. The hours of the day go by, 24 hours, and they have no responsibilities to anybody. There's no boss that requires them to do any work. Of course, they might go see a doctor. They might go do shopping. Of course, everybody has to attend to whatever needs they have to attend to. But then the rest of the day, they come home, they have a choice. They can watch TV. They can go out for lunch. They can go out for supper. They can go ice skating. They can go watch a movie. You can do all sorts of things, whatever you want to do. Or you could be sitting and studying Torah. So we're saying a person who has it within his power that he can study Torah, nobody's going to stop him. Money, no problem. Time, no problem. It's just that he refuses to use his resources for the sake of Torah because he wants to enjoy whatever it is that he's doing. But kol she'efshar lo la'asok b'Torah ve'eino osek, anybody who has him the power that he can occupy himself in Torah and he doesn't occupy himself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mevi alav yeserim mechuarim v'ochrim. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings upon him affliction, terrible afflictions, troublesome, awful afflictions come to this person. Why? Because he is not fulfilling his purpose in life. Because although God wants us to have enjoyment in the physical world, he wants us to attend to what it is that he wants from us, which is the study of Torah and the fulfillment of mitzvot. And then when we eat our cake and we enjoy it and we make a bracha before, we make a bracha afterwards and we feel good and we use this energy to study more Torah and do another mitzvah, God is receiving much pleasure because we are using his things that he has brought into the world for us for a holy purpose. This person cannot be compared to a person who simply eats cake all day long for the sake of eating cake without a thought about studying Torah, fulfilling mitzvot, or the purpose of what the cake is there for. The cake is not there in and of itself for the pleasure of the cake. The cake is there for the break. The cake is there in order to give a person extra energy, to make him feel stronger, to make him feel happier, to make him feel that he's got some sweetness on his tongue and it's enjoyable and he feels that he can carry on, he can do more, he can do even more. So over here we see if a person had the opportunity to observe mitzvot, the opportunity to study Torah, that's what we're talking about, ve'eino or sake, and he didn't occupy himself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mevi alav yesori me'ochuarim u'achimoto, shneimar, as it says, ne'elamti dumia, I was mute with silence, hecheshesi mitov, which means I was silent from good, ukaevi nekar, and my pain was strong. What is King David telling us? He's saying, I was mute with silence, and I was silent from good. What does it mean I was silent from good? It means, ve'ein tov, ela Torah. The word tov, that I was silent from good, refers to the Torah. How do we know that tov is Torah? Shneimar, because the pasuk says, Ki lekach tov nasati lachem, Torasi al tazovu. For a good teaching I have given to you. My Torah, do not forsake it. What does that mean? Lekach tov, this good teaching, this is the Torah. So we see that tov is Torah. And therefore King David was saying the following. He's saying the reason that I was therefore experiencing pain at that point in time is because I was silent from good. I was not occupying myself in Torah, and therefore it came out, I was liable for the trouble that God would give to me in place of what I should have been doing, which was studying Torah. Omar Rabbi Zeira, said Rabbi Zeira, the Gemara continues. V'isema Rabbi Chanina Bar Papa, and some say it was Rabbi Chanina Bar Papa who said the following. Bora'e, come and see. Shelo kemidas HaKadosh Baruch Hu midas basav adam. The behavior, the attributes, the level of the characteristics of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not like the characteristics of a person of flesh and blood. Midas basav adam, because when it relates to a person of flesh and blood, adam mocher chefetz lachavero. A person sells an object to his friends. I have a car to sell. So he sells the car and he makes some money from it. Moicher atzev. The seller is disappointed. Why? Because he lost out on the object that he had. I mean, the truth of the matter is, why did he sell the object? In order to get the money. But if he could have had both, he didn't really need the money. He had so much money in any case, he could have just thrown out the item. That would have made him happy, because if it came to a certain point where he realized the item was worth nothing and he could just throw it away, he threw it away. But it comes to a certain point in time where a person has certain things and he says, I need more money, I need to be able to live. So he takes a particular item and he sells it. Or perhaps he has an old car and he wants a newer car. So, but the whole thing is that he needs more money so that he can buy the newer car. So the problem is he has to get rid of something that he already owns in order to buy something new. But perhaps it could be he's not so happy selling his item because in fact, he likes the item. But he needs the money. If he didn't need the money, he wouldn't be selling it. Meicher atzev, the one who sells, is disappointed. He lost out on something. Velokeach sameach, but the one who buys it is happy. Obviously, he just bought himself a car, whatever it was. If he didn't want it, he wouldn't buy it. The fact that he's buying it shows he has some sort of pleasure in this particular thing that he's buying. Aval HaKadosh Baruch Hu eino kain, but the Holy One, blessed be He, is not so. He doesn't work that way. Nasan lahem Torah liYisrael. He gave the Torah to the Jewish people. V'sameach, and he's happy. He gave the Torah to the Jewish people, and even though that he gave it to them, he's happy. Shneimar, as it says, Ki lekach tov nasati lachem torasi al tazovu. I have given you a good teaching. My Torah, do not abandon her. Do not abandon it. So it means to say that Hashem gave the Torah to us. He acknowledges the good. He even tells us it's good. And he says, please, don't forsake it. A good portion is understood as a good purchase. Although God sold Torah to Israel, he rejoices in the sale and praises the object before its new owner. He's happy. Everything about what he is giving over to the new owner is good things. And he wants to tell the owner exactly how good it is of what it is that he's giving them, or what he's selling them. Omar Rava says, the Gemara continues, the Rava said, the Isayma Rav Chisda, some say it was Rav Chisda who said, if a person sees that afflictions are coming to him, isn't this the topic of our Gemara? Afflictions. We're trying to stay away from afflictions. We're studying Torah to stay away from afflictions. Why are these afflictions coming to me? The person asks. If afflictions come to a person, he needs to ask himself a question. He needs to begin to investigate his actions. What does it mean to investigate one's actions? It means to take a Cheshbon HaNefesh, to do an accounting of one's soul. So if a person is in a situation of pain and affliction, he has to think to himself, if there is a God in the world, and that's what we're talking about, there's a God in the world, there's a creator. He fashioned us. He created our souls. He put the soul into the body. He says to us that we're here for a purpose. He wants us to fulfill the purpose. Surely if we're fulfilling the purpose, things are going to go well. So therefore, the moment that afflictions come to us, we need to look at ourselves and examine our deeds. Are we doing what's correct? Is God affecting me and afflicting me because I might have done something wrong, and I should think about what it could be that I did wrong? Perhaps I stole some money from somebody, and God wants me to be aware that theft is not something that's good. Even if a person thinks he can get away with it, he can't get away with it from God. God can still afflict him and hold him responsible, liable for his particular act of corruption that he has done. Shenema, as the pasuk says, we investigate our ways, and let us investigate. This is the way, searching. We're searching and we're investigating. V'nashuva ad Hashem, and let us return to Hashem. So the pasuk over here, which is written in the book of Echa, the book of Lamentations, written by the prophet Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah. So this particular thing we read, of course, on the day of Tisha B'Av. On Tisha B'Av, we should remind ourselves that we have lost the Beis HaMikdash. We don't have a temple, which means that we are lacking a certain aspect of Kedusha in the world, which allows us to connect with God. So on Tisha B'Av, we have to examine our deeds. Why is the temple destroyed? Why did God destroy the temple? Why is God destroying the temple? Because so long as the temple hasn't been rebuilt, it's as if the temple has been destroyed every single day of our lives. So on Tisha B'Av especially, we sit down and we take stock. We take notes. We do a Cheshbon HaNefesh. We need to investigate our ways. We need to check them out and search out. And we need to return back to God. We need to say we've done something that's not 100% right. We need to do what's right. Continues the Gemara, Pish Pesh V'lo Matzah. If a person, he began to investigate, he began to search out all of his deeds, and he says to himself, you know something? I do Cheshbon HaNefesh every single night. Before I go to sleep, the person says, I take out a notepad and I begin to think about the day. And I say to myself, what things did I do? I begin to examine. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I davened at 7. And I think to myself, you know, the day begins at 5:30. Maybe I should wake up 5:30. Maybe I should wake up at 5. Maybe I should wake up earlier. All right. He says to himself, you know what? I wake up at Chatzot. I wake up at midnight. I woke up this morning at midnight. In the evening, I woke up at Chatzot and I began my day. I was doing Tikkun Chatzot. Then I was studying Torah. And then I davened Shakaris with the minyan. It was Nate's best possible time. Oh, then he's thinking to himself, hold on a second. Then I remember somebody needed a lift home from shul. I said to him, even though I go that direction, I'm not giving him the lift. You know, maybe I should have given him the lift. All right, he carries on. He says, then I had breakfast. I spent 45 minutes in breakfast. Maybe I could have spent 20 minutes in breakfast. Did I need to spend 45 minutes in breakfast? I was making eggs and I was making cereal and I was were cooking, and I was involved in the eating, and I was talking to some people along the way. Breakfast lasted 45 minutes. Maybe I should have made it shorter, and so on and so forth. But this fellow, he's really good. He woke up at Chatzot. He davened Neitzach Hama, he davened Shmona Esrei. He had a very short breakfast. He made all his brachas. He gave people lifts home from shul afterwards. They didn't have cars. They gave him a lift. He went to work. He didn't waste any time. He did what he was supposed to do, and he studied his Torah as he should do. He was good. He did everything right. So it comes out, if it's the following, pish pesh v'lo matza, if he didn't find any problem with his deeds, yetle bebitul Torah, he should say to himself, the reason that I'm being found liable is because I'm not studying enough Torah. Oh, the answer is, I didn't do anything wrong. I did everything right. My deeds were good, but I didn't study enough Torah. What does it mean? I was Bitul Torah. For example, it came to lunchtime at work, and I have an hour break. So I decided, you know what I'll do for the hour? I'll sit and eat my peanut butter sandwich. So he sat and he ate his peanut butter sandwich, and while he was doing so, he looked into space, doing nothing. And the whole hour went by, he achieved nothing, but he ate his peanut butter sandwich. But it could have been, he could have eaten his peanut butter sandwich in 10 minutes, benched, and spent 45 minutes studying Torah. How many hours during the day does the average person waste achieving nothing whatsoever when he could spend that time studying Torah? Wasting time is a serious offense, because during that time, which is limited, we have the opportunity to study Torah, which never comes back to us again. Therefore, if a person is going through difficulties, he's got Yisurim, he's suffering, and he says to himself, but as far as my deeds are concerned, I'm doing well. And he's right. He did well. But perhaps it could be that he was Bitul Torah. He was Mevatel Torah. It means he spent time wasted when he could have been spending that time studying Torah. Sheneemar. How do we know that? Because the pasuk says, Ashrei hagever asher tiyasrenu ya umitorascha telamdenu. Happy is the person whom God afflicts, and from his Torah and teaching and teach out your law, and your law you teach out. Which means to say that the fellow wasn't studying enough Torah, and that is why he was being afflicted by God. The Gemara continues. This verse teaches us that the suffering will cause him to return to your law. The pasuk goes one step further. What I was saying, happy is the man who you punish and teach out your law. So as a result of his punishment, he will come to study more Torah. Ve'im tala v'lo matza. If he checked it out and he didn't find that there was a problem with his Bitul Torah, as far as he was concerned, he spent the whole day studying Torah. The whole day he was in Kollel. Or even if he wasn't in Kollel, he was at home. He had his breakfast, it was short. You can't hold him liable for that. He needed to have a bath. He has to keep clean. Can't hold him liable. He needs to go to the bathroom. Certain things he needed to do. He needed to go to the shops. He needed to do certain things. Fine. But when he was sitting at home and he had the opportunity to look into space or to study Torah, he spent that time studying Torah. So he says to himself, no way. I was not Bitul Torah for a moment during the day. A very hard thing for anybody to say in today's times, but let's assume that he can actually admit it. And he says to himself, I never wasted a moment of the day. I was constantly involved in the study of Torah. Says the Gemara, Beyadua, for sure. You know why this person is suffering? He's got an ache in his stomach, got a headache, whatever the case is. Why is he going through these pains? What is God doing to him? Beyadua, it's clear. Sheyisurim shel ahava heim. These are punishments of love. This is an unbelievable topic to speak about, very difficult to understand. One really has to be on a super high level to understand what it means that God is affecting a person in a certain way because of love. But whatever the case is, there are certain times in which God afflicts a person, not because he did anything wrong, but simply because of his love towards him. How we understand that, again, it's not something for a discussion at this point in time. How can we assume that a father takes a son who is doing all the right things? He does well at school. He's the captain of the sports team. But I don't just mean that in the sense of wasting time. I mean that he does really good work. He's contributing, and it's his exercise. He keeps himself fit. He does so many acts of kindness to people. He's involved in a charity club of some kind. This young boy, he's doing all these things. He's really got his life together, and he's working so hard to do things that are right. And his father comes to him one day, comes home from school. Tati, he says, I helped the team win today, and we did well, and I made the other team feel great as well. We gave them a consolation prize, and they felt terrific about the game. And then I gave charity, and we went to the charity club, and here are my marks at school. I did really well. I put in effort, not because having high marks means that makes me a good person, but it means that I've been putting my time into studying, and I'm trying the best that I can. You can see all the effort that I've gone through over here. I've really done well. The father gives him a punch. How do we understand such a thing? And sometimes God does this to us, as it says here in the Gemara, that if a person cannot find any Bitul Torah, then we know that this is a love of a punishment, an affliction of love, and an amazing level, something we cannot understand, something that can only be understood in the next world when the soul leaves the body. Shenema, as the pasuk says, Ki es asher yehav Hashem yochiach, because the one who God loves, he rebukes, he reproves. God reproves, he afflicts the person whom he loves. Very strange concept. Omer Rava, Rava said that Rava said that Rav Schora said, Omer Rav Huna, that Rav Huna said, Kol she'HaKadosh Baruch Hu chofetz bo, anybody who HaKadosh Baruch Hu desires, medak'o b'yiseirim, he afflicts him, he pressures him with afflictions. Shene'emar, because it says, V'Hashem chofetz dako hechali, that in whom Hashem delights, he oppresses him with disease, says the pasuk, to see if his soul would offer itself in guilt, that he might see his children lengthen his days, and the desire of the Lord might prosper by his hand. This verse illustrates that in whomever God delights, he afflicts with illness. Another amazing verse. These words that we're reading here on this page of the Gemara are powerful, life-changing words, words that can stick with us for the rest of our lives every single day, and make us aware that sometimes when we go through difficulties, it is not because we did anything wrong. Although it could be, check out, everybody should check out, what did they do? Are they doing things that are wrong? Could be. Fix it up. Are they not studying enough Torah? Bitul Torah, big aveira, fix it up. But it could be that sometimes God loves the soul so much that he afflicts the soul with afflictions. And that is his love, which unfortunately we only get to understand in the next world. Let us just look at some of these points on the side, the notes here before we conclude. If a person sees that suffering has befallen him, he should examine his actions. The Gemara teaches that when one realizes that he is ill, he should not assume that it is happenstance and immediately turn to medical doctors. Rather, he should view it as an opportunity to examine his own actions and conduct. When we are going through difficulties, being afflicted, disease, who knows what, we need to examine ourselves and say, before we see the doctor, could it be that we've done something wrong? Did we hurt somebody? Did we not fulfill the mitzvot as we should? Are we eating a proper kosher diet? Are we fulfilling the mitzvah of Shabbos and family purity? Are we guarding our eyes? Are we guarding our tongues from saying bad things? And so on and so forth. A doctor examines a patient to determine the cause of the illness so that he may prescribe effective medicine to counteract the illness and restore the patient to physical health. Similarly, an examination of the soul is required to determine the source of one's spiritual illness. The first step in curing the illness is abandoning the conduct that is deleterious to one's spiritual health. So just as it is in the physical world, that if we are not well, and the doctor says the reason that we're not well is because we're eating a particular food, and if we stop eating the food, we will be much better. So if we listen to the doctor's advice, we'll feel much better after not eating the food. So too in the spiritual world. If we do away with the actions that are not conducive to good spiritual health, then of course we will feel much better, and God will not afflict us with these particular punishments and afflictions. Nevertheless, if he examined his way and found no transgression, the question was raised, is it feasible that one examined and found none? The verse states, there is not a righteous man upon earth that does good and sin not. And immediately thereafter, the Gemara suggests, attributed to dereliction in the study of Torah. Why? Some commentaries answered that the suffering that one experiences is proportionate to the crime. Therefore, if he found that he did not violate a prohibition to warrant so severe a punishment, or that the punishment does not fit the crime, then he should attribute it to dereliction in the study of Torah, as no doubt he did not study as much as he should have, or did not expend the requisite effort. Interestingly enough, other commentaries point out that when one needs to study what it means, if it says there that we've looked and we realize we can't find anything wrong in what we did, we should study Torah. The other commentaries say study Torah so that through the study of Torah, we'll find out where it is that we've gone wrong, and therefore we'll be able to know how to correct ourselves. So it's not just a case of wasting our time when we could have been studying Torah, but it's that we don't know what we did wrong. Well, if we don't know what we did wrong, we need to learn more about what it is that we need to do right, so that we can find out where it is that we did indeed do wrong. What are these afflictions of love? Yisurim shel ahava. Some explain this to mean that when one is young and healthy, it is easy to engage in the study of Torah and fulfillment of mitzvot. This is not the case when one is afflicted with suffering. Sometimes God afflicts a person so that he will overcome those afflictions and engage in Torah study despite them. Through this process, one's ultimate reward is enhanced based on the principle that one's reward is proportional to his suffering. So afflictions of love, Yisurim shel ahava, have another advantage. The other advantage is the fact when a person is afflicted and yet he still goes and studies Torah, he reaches a higher level through the effort that he has gone through in order to study that Torah, and he is deserving of a greater reward. In other words, if a person is fit and healthy and he studies whatever it is that he needs to study, some halakha, a page of Talmud, the Chumash, whatever it is, when he studies and he's healthy, it's easy. But it's not so easy to study that same piece of Torah when one has a headache. One wants to go lie down. But nevertheless, if God has afflicted a person in this way, God forbid, and then afterwards he comes to still study Torah, he is rewarded double and triple and quadruple, because he is showing that even though he is being afflicted, his love is still to attach himself to God. He will not give up. He loves the study of Torah in order that he can fulfill the mitzvot, which is what God wants from him. And even when God afflicts him, he continues to do what is right. He does not stop himself just because there are external forces that prevent him, and he could have an excuse not to. He says, it is more important for me to connect with God. I'm going to do it in spite of all the pains and afflictions. God says to him then, I will reward you with even more. So this is called Yisurim shel ahava. God wants to reward with a reward that is even superior to what he would receive. So he gives him this affliction, and with the affliction, the person continues to do what is right. And God says, here is a person who is devoted to me, because it's not a case of how he feels. It's a case of that he realizes that he has an obligation. And here he is fulfilling that obligation, doing the right thing, and serving God and studying Torah. This is the end of the shiur. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm Eliyahu Sher from Chesed Ve'emet. You can find my site on www.lovingkindness.co. If you've enjoyed this shiur, please like my video, provide a positive comment below, which will help me, encourage me, and I'll know that you're enjoying it and getting something out of it. And click on the bell. After subscribing to my channel, please click on the bell so that you'll be notified of future shiurim. In the meantime, I look forward to another shiur, and as always, please feel free to be in touch with me. I would be delighted to be in touch with you, and you can find me at the sites that I've mentioned. In the meantime, I wish you everything of the best and look forward to another shiur, learning with you again and growing more together with you. I wish you everything of the best, and I wish you shalom, shalom. Bye-bye.